Welcome to PCM Podcast, a series of informative podcasts with experts in their fields exploring a wide range of topics in payments. The theme for today is transparent AI. Machine learning is a prevalent method within the banking sector to address fraud. However, the results of the machine learning models, with certain cases, are so cryptic that they can be regarded as black box. Hardly anyone can explain precisely why specific outcomes are achieved. Transparency is a crucial topic, with data policy steadily growing in the importance in Europe. To safeguard privacy laws and non-discriminatory modelling, regulations by the EU could consequently include the conditional use of explainable or interpretable AI. Therefore, we believe that a transparent approach to machine learning will become essential in how banks and payment service providers address AML operations. To discuss this, I'd like to introduce our guest for the day, Roy Prayikulam, Senior Vice President of Risk and Fraud at Inform. Roy is the Senior Vice President of Inform's Risk and Fraud Division, a global provider of solutions for AML compliance and fraud prevention, offering a flexible financial crime prevention platform that enables customers to implement customer and transaction behavior monitoring in compliance with national and international regulations. So Roy, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so let's get straight into this topic by setting the scene. Perhaps you could give us a brief overview of what machine learning is and how it's differentiated from AI. And then perhaps as a second part to that, you could go into exactly what transparent AI is, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually an interesting one because I see so many discussions around AI, ML, and so on. And I also see that most time people just mix it around talking about AI when they actually are asking about machine learning and vice versa. So how to put it in simple terms? So AI you can just see as the kind of general term, so artificial intelligence. So basically the task of computer systems, the ability of them to mimic human behavior, that you can basically say as AI. This means the concept of AI basically managed different kind of aspects. One thing is, for instance, this kind of knowledge-based AI, like representation of knowledge. This might be kind of data warehouses where also certain kind of logics are implemented, how to deal with certain kind of topics, so meaning knowledge representation. It is going into the area of automated decision making, so how to make use of, let's say, simple rule sets. If then else, if this and this happens, something should be done. So automated decision making. Also making use of fuzzy logic based models, like not only this kind of hard boundaries, if this and this, then that, but also like how to act or decide in a human based manner, like if something is high or something is low. So it's not always gray and black and white, right? So meaning there are sometimes things where we as humans are deciding, taking into account certain kind of degree of confidence of a certain, let's say, condition. And this is also a part of the whole concept of AI. Then we have got the other areas which are also popular nowadays, like computer vision. So, but how to identify things, data, and so on with the use of, let's say, cameras and so on. So how to identify a face, so facial recognition. All this is areas of computer vision. And then we have got the area of, for instance, natural language processing. So to identify the voice, to understand what the human talked about. Very popular nowadays, as we know. And so these are all parts of AI. And then we have got the area of machine learning, which basically focus on the concept of how to take the data at hand, so historical data and so on, how to process this and to learn new topics out of it. So to really learn from existing data sets. That's machine learning, the area where machine learning is focusing upon. And then when we talk about, so this was like setting into scenes, what is AI, what is machine learning? And then we have got the topic of transparent AI. And this is something which is quite crucial, especially in the area of fraud detection, risk prevention. It's about are we able to understand what the IT system, the software, how you want to call it, how it learns certain kind of items? Like imagine when we are making use of solution which is utilizing machine learning to basically have a risk assessment of a customer, for instance. If somebody applies for a new account, and we take the data at hand, everything which we have to score, yeah, there is this customer would like to have this and this kind of an account with this and this kind of credit, and suddenly there is a risk score assigned to it, 80%, so high risk, for instance. Then of course it's one thing to say, okay, it was the system which said, okay, it's high risk. The other thing is to understand how it basically came to this risk assessment. And this means we need to make use of models which are interpretable, where we know, okay, due to this and this kind of data points, the machine decided to assign a high risk to it. And that's basically why people are taking a look at transparent AI to really understand how did this decision, how it was being made. So how did the machine end up with this kind of a judgment? And this is the area, of course, which is important, because we need to always see the whole concept of AI and machine learning. We are making great progress in there, but we are still at the beginning. So we need to really understand, what are we doing there? How did the system learn? Is this correct what the system learned? Is the data sets which we used, are these data sets which we can rely upon? So we are then touching areas of ethical AI, beneficial AI, and so on.
Okay, so why do you believe that transparent AI has suddenly become such an important topic at the moment?
So as said, we are in an area where we are making very big progress in the whole, in whole topics of AI, and therefore we need to understand if we are making use of software solutions to really, have in our area of fraud prevention risk scorings. We need to understand how this has been done. I just touched upon a term which is called where we need to basically think about the ethical use of AI. Just to give you a kind of a talking example, there had been several years before the police in the US made use of machine learning to basically score people about the likelihood that they become a kind of a fraudster or criminal and so on. And what happened is that Afro-Americans, they were rated high, and people with white skin have been rated low, because the data which has been provided to the machine perfectly had this kind of correlation in it. And this is something which we need to understand. Do we sometimes also making use of the right data? In this example, of course, there is a kind of a bias in there, right? So most people who have been arrested and so on have been black. Does it mean that only black people were using, were criminals? No, it's just like there was a lack of data in that. And in order to identify these kind of behaviors, that we are not afterwards making a judgment based upon there was a score from a machine, we need to understand how the machine basically did the scoring. Is it something which we feel is correct, or was there a lack of data? Do we need to overrule it? In order to understand this, it is important that we make use of transparent AI, especially as we are in an area where we need to also sometimes, not only sometimes, but we need to also check the outcome. Is it still correct? We need to fine tune something, and also fine tuning results can only be done if we understand how certain decisions have been made. If we are just fishing in the dark, of course, this is not very helpful.
Sure. So it's possibly slightly controversial, and we'll move on to ChatGPT in a second. But does the industry really need AI to prevent fraud and manage their risks? I mean, is it just all hype at the moment? Do you see that?
Actually, I'm getting this kind of a question quite often now, also from the market. And I can also understand this, because there have been always this kind of a hype about big data, cloud computing, AI, and so on. And people naturally have the feeling like, is this all relevant, or will this be gone after, let's say, 3-4 months, and then nobody is going to talk about this anymore? Again, I can only judge from my perspective, and I would say no, this is not going to be gone in some months. It is just going to continue. We will see more and more kind of developments in the area of AI. And to come to your question, do we need this? I would say yes. Just give you an example. When I started in the field of fraud prevention at that time, years before as a consultant, I was consulting our customers in the area of fraud detection for digital payments, which at that time had been only card transactions. So this was when people were talking about digital payments, it was cards. That's it. That was even a time when people were rarely making use of internet banking and so on, because not everybody had got stable internet connections. People were not trusting it, all these kind of things. And if I now take a look into at that time to find fraud within the data, it was already a kind of a task with making use of BI toolage and so on in order to find certain kind of correlation afterwards to put it into handwritten rules in order to prevent this kind of fraud. And at that time, we were basically talking about, I think, 5 million cards transaction a day, something like this. And nowadays, we need to take a look into, if we are talking about digital payments, how many different payment methods are we currently thinking about? Meaning, if you talk to somebody in Switzerland, they might have a completely other definition of digital payment if I'm talking to somebody in the UK, or in, let's say, if we go to Germany. It's just like there are so many kind of areas how you can move money from A to B. So there are different kind of payment methods, different kind of schemes, all these kind of, let's say, interaction possibilities between a customer and finally the bank, which are there, which I would say will also, this kind of development is not being stopped. Each, let's say, day there might be something new upcoming, something which is very user friendly, which is very fast. So the possibility of us being customers of to move money around, this is just getting more and more, and of course also nicer for us. But on the end, if you take now, think yourself out of the view of a fraud prevention officer or a risk analyst, what does it mean? Suddenly they need to see data from how did the customer make use of its cards? What was the interaction in the internet banking? How did he use PayPal? How did he use Apple payments? How did he use Samsung payments? In order to get a sense about, this is the usual customer behavior. If you, for instance, would see a transaction being initiated, let's say from, I'm just naming any country, don't judge me on this, let's say Tanzania. There's a kind of an account movement, somebody logged in from Tanzania and is moving now money to another account. If this person who is originating, let's say from the UK, people could think, could be a kind of slight risk, right? But if you know that this person has been made use of his card locally, some, let's say, hours before at the airport in Tanzania, you could also judge about, okay, he might be there. If he now is also making use of his mobile application from the bank, and we would get the geolocation and we can track, okay, this customer is really there, suddenly something which would have been raised high risk is suddenly not a risk at all. Meaning, what I want to express is it's about this difficulty of making use of the data at hand to create this kind of an holistic picture. This is nothing which a human can do alone. You need software solutions. You need also artificial intelligence-based solutions, which also gives you this kind of an helping hand, which will tell you there is something which is really suspicious, there's an anomaly, to really help you, to guide you into the direction where you need to investigate, and not like there is something I need to just come up with some rule, and if this is not it, something is going out of hand. So you need to have this kind of a support from an AI-based solution, because what an AI can do is to screen much faster large amount of data to find anomalies in it. That's something a human can't do. On the other side, what a human is good for is gut feeling. And therefore, I personally, and with the solution which we are basically delivering, we are focusing on this hybrid AI approach. Not only machine learning, but also this knowledge-based human expertise, which you can also put into there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've chatted there a lot about how AI can be implemented to help us against the fight of fraud. With the growing usage of ChatGPT, how do you see something like that, an AI native to consumers and the power that it has, and then of course matched with some of the inventors of these types of AIs being very open now about the dangers of it? When or if that type of technology falls into the fraudsters' hands, how do you see, your job or the industry's job of the folk out there who are protecting consumers against fraud? How do you see that step change being when the criminals, fraudsters, get hold of those kinds of AIs? I mean, like, what kind of challenge does that give to you and the industry in general?
Let me first start with, I think this kind of developments of toolage like ChatGPT and so on, we can't ignore them. We need to just realize this is there, this is out there now. And on the one side, from a kind of a perspective of us being the ones who are in need of making use of artificial intelligence or toolage in order to fight fraud, we need to see what kind of possibilities are there. For instance, if there is sometimes in the within crime investigation, you need to search for different kind of documents, different kind of topics to get hold of something. You can make use of this kind of technology which supports you to do this much faster. For instance, if you now take a look into our personal kind of usage, everybody, I assume, who is a bit tech affine nowadays has tried out ChatGPT. If somebody is just thinking about something, an investigation in a certain kind of area, try to think about how much time this would have taken just making use of manual Googling, or if you just ask ChatGPT this question, how thorough and full this kind of an answer is, which just within seconds comes back, right? So this is something where we need to always think about how can we make use of this kind of technology to really support detection possibilities. And this might be several kind of things. This might be in the investigation. This might be in terms of name checking, fuzzy matching, and so on. All these kind of areas where typically much manual effort is there. This can be eased up with technologies like, I'm not saying ChatGPT, but like ChatGPT. On the other side, we need to be aware, and that's something which we are discussing quite often now within this kind of expert rounds, to really think about how the fraud space will change in future. And we can also see some first glimpse of it. Meaning, what we are currently sketching, sometimes you need to sketch this kind of what could be, right, in order to be prepared for it, is today you can see a lot of fraud happening, which can be classified in this kind of romance scam. Like there is somebody sitting somewhere in, I don't know, South Africa or whatever, and who is trying to get into contact with somebody here, lonely person, chatting and getting this kind of trust, and suddenly there's a kind of a made up story. Somebody is just waiting for the money to be paid out, but needs a kind of an investment of $5,000 so that he or she can get the kind of a big lottery win or whatever. So, all these kind of fancy stories. And the topic is that today, there are these kind of fraud call centers where people are actually working to get into contact with people, write the right answers, and so on. Now imagine you can do this with ChatGPT, because you can really mimic human interactions with this. Now imagine you make use of deep fakes, so you can really have video, friends, no person is in the background. You can create all kind of things around it, like this photo generators and so on. Sometimes people in this kind of chats, they are asking for, can you send me a picture of this and this, to just get trust. Is this a real person? Is it just to avoid that there's some stolen pics from the internet and so on? Now with this kind of AI photo generating tools, deep fakes and so on, you can see where the story is going to, right? Meaning there are so many possibilities where fraudsters can just automatize all this kind of work and therefore scale it. And what would happen if now many people are simultaneously being asked for this? People have less investment. They don't need to pay their, let's say, employees. They can just scale it up with some PCs and just try to discuss with so many people out there. And if only 1% of this is going to happen. If 1% of the people being addressed is moving money, this can have a huge damage. And therefore, we need to also make sure that we are able, also in an automated sense, to really make use of this kind of technology to screen all the kind of transactions which are being initiated, to see, is there any kind of anomaly? Is there any kind of correlation where we say, okay, that does not fit into the normal user behavior? Or we see that there is a sudden correlation in an area where people are trying to move money, to really have this in place to counterfight it.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting time. Must be quite exciting from your perspective, staying one step ahead of all this.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on from that a bit, what does an organization like a bank need to keep in mind when launching a machine learning project? Addressing fraud prevention activities that include transparent insights into the models that they are trying to employ.
Although one thing which we always say to our customers is, it's not just like saying, okay, we need a solution which is making use of machine learning and then everything has been solved. People should have an idea, what is the kind of pain spot they have. So is it now, are we going to utilize the model within the, let's say, internet banking area or application fraud or. So to really see, okay, what are we trying to solve? Then to really think about what kind of data sets are required for that. And therefore, there are experts like us who can consult in that area to say, okay, this is the data which we should take in this kind of quality in order to get this kind of models trained. So meaning it's about focus and not just to say we have a bunch of data, just put one model into there and something will happen. No, nothing is going to be happen. It's just you need to really stay focused to know what you want to achieve with which data. And then what we always say, it's not only about machine learning. It should be a hybrid approach, especially in a highly dynamic area like fraud prevention, because there are other areas where you are just making use of machine learning in order to understand a certain process. And if the process is being understood, the model can perfectly act with this. In the fraud prevention area, if you identify a modus operandi today and you close the door, then from tomorrow on, there will be another kind of an attack which will be developed. So it's always this cat and mouse game, right? And therefore, you need to also have, next to the machine learning, also a knowledge-based side to really see what can be done with data and what can be done without data. What do I mean with what can be done? What can be done without data? Imagine there is a new kind of payment scheme to be launched, as an example. Meaning for this payment scheme, as is just going to be launched, there is no data. Meaning from a machine learning side, the model will try to learn with what is going on, right? But we all, as humans, already know if we would see from this kind of usage of the payment scheme this and this and this is high risk, therefore we should act against it. So it's just one thing is data driven, the other thing is knowledge driven, gut feeling driven, and both sides, that's what we feel and see what in the area of risk and fraud prevention gives best results.
Yeah, it's an extremely interesting topic. So I really appreciate your time today, Roy. Thank you very much for joining us on a PCM podcast.
Always welcome.